A pregnant woman is found stabbed to death inside her apartment.
This is really, truly a tragic situation.
Authorities would arrest her alleged killer, who turned out to be someone she knew.
This is a really personal crime, which I think just the very nature of it suggests that it was somebody close. I mean, I know that the alleged perpetrator is saying he didn't do it, he wasn't there, he was only in the home for a short period of time. But this is so personal, and these kinds of personal injuries where they're going after the neck, the belly, the body, the face, that usually lends itself to somebody who knew the victim well.
The case unfolded on July 31st when a Massachusetts mother called maintenance at her daughter's apartment building after she hadn't gotten in touch with her. After a wellness check to her apartment, that's when the gruesome discovery was made. The body of 25-year-old Brianna Welsh, who was 3 months pregnant, was found dead with visible injuries, multiple sharp force injuries. As authorities say, she was stabbed to death.
I mean, it happened within hours of her returning from the hospital from the original domestic violence incident, which is really, really um, shocking almost. I mean, it's just kind of like, what, why, I guess is sort of the big question here. The timeline is really short.
During the investigation, detectives would unearth more horrific clues. Just a day prior to her death, Brianna called 911 to report her boyfriend, who was living with her, had punched her in the stomach. Her boyfriend, Brandon Vozella, was arrested for the crime around 2 p.m. that day. He was charged with 1 count of assault and battery on a household member and 1 count of assault and battery upon a pregnant person. After Brandon's arrest, Brianna went to the hospital. She would ultimately be released a few hours later and was back at home around 6:15 that evening, according to data from her apartment key fob. After Brianna was discovered dead, investigators tracked down Brandon Vozella, who was released after posting bail. Brandon said he hadn't gone back to their shared apartment and was reportedly wearing the same clothes he had on since his initial arrest, which, according to officials, didn't show any blood. Investigators would then turn their attention to another person that was living inside the apartment with Brianna and Brandon. That's Brandon's 26-year-old brother, Zachary Vozella. According to prosecutors, Zachary was homeless and had been staying with the two. After investigators initially questioned him about Brianna's murder, Zachary's alibi was that he had been at a Dunkin' Donuts all day. However, police later learned that wasn't true. He then changed his story and told police he had been at the apartment from 2 to 8:30 p.m., however claimed he never saw Brianna. However, key fob data from her apartment showed she used her key around 6:15 p.m. that evening, and whoever last left the apartment used the key around 8:30 p.m., as officials say no other door openings were recorded until the welfare check. Investigators would get more clues that seemingly pointed the horrific crime to Zachary Vozella. Authorities found Brianna's key fob in a backpack at a relative's home where Zachary claimed he had been staying. And that wasn't the only thing found. According to the Essex County District Attorney's Office, video footage showed Zachary Vozella carrying several bags, including a trash bag. Prosecutors say the bag contained clothing with red-brown stains. And that's not all. A kitchen knife was also found that tested positive for blood. Former Massachusetts prosecutor Jennifer Roman explains the evidence against Zachary is overwhelming.
Right now, there's definitely strong enough evidence to suggest probable cause, meaning that it's more likely than not, that he was involved in some way. He originally gave the alibi, and then when they pulled the surveillance video from Dunkin' Donuts and confronted him with that, then he changed his story and then said, "Oh, well, I was home, but I didn't see her." And then we know that there was a cab, documents from the cab company that have placed her at the home shortly before this alleged murder happened, and also places the alleged perpetrator in the home as well, around or in the area of the home around that same time. And I think what's particularly compelling here, though, is that he was seen carrying out a bag of something, which bag later was found to have a knife with blood on it, as well as some clothing that appeared to have blood on it as well. When the DNA comes back on that knife, that will probably be, if it comes back with her blood, then that's the linchpin in his case. I mean, how else would he have come into possession of the knife that was used to potentially kill her, has her DNA on it, if it wasn't him? And he hasn't offered up any other reason for why he would have that kind of incriminating evidence on his person and be carrying it away from the scene of the crime. Again, he may change his story again, But I think at this point, if you know that you are the prime suspect, you're sort of offering up anything you can if it wasn't you, right? And you're ready to sort of turn over anybody who may have done this, even if you were somehow involved. You don't want to be the main culprit. And he hasn't offered up anything yet other than, well, I was home, but I didn't see her, and hasn't done anything to explain why he may have had the alleged weapon with her blood, with blood on it, at this point in time. So I think it's at this point, from what we know, all signs are pointing, unfortunately, that he was the one, who committed this crime. But as things go in these kinds of cases, sometimes something happens that surprises us and we go, oh, maybe not. But as we sit here today with the limited information we have, things are not looking good for him.
Zachary Vozella was quickly arrested and charged with Brianna's murder. At his arraignment, he pleaded not guilty on charges of murder and assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. The prosecution asked that Zachary be held without bail. And while noting he doesn't have a criminal record, prosecutors say Brianna appeared to have wanted her boyfriend out of the apartment after the assault and wanted Zachary out even before that. But as Zachary will be held without bail until a September hearing, Roman explains it's likely he'll remain behind bars.
The prosecutors are going to present the evidence to a grand jury as quickly as they can. And they will secure an indictment for murder, most likely, given just the evidence that we know already. And I'm sure they most likely have additional evidence. Like I said, when that DNA evidence comes back, if it is in fact her DNA, then that's going to be really compelling evidence against him. So the prosecutors will get a grand jury, they'll get him indicted, and then they will have him arraigned in the Superior Court, where he will most likely be held without bail again. When you're accused of murder, especially of something this heinous, you're not going to be given bail. You're going to be considered a dangerous person and be held without bail. And right now, that arraignment date that we have in the district court is really just a placeholder. It's just a way to keep him held on bail while the prosecution secures the grand jury indictment and then can get the case up and running in the Superior Court, which is where he would ultimately be tried if it was to go to trial.
A GoFundMe page to help Brianna's family would reveal more heartbreaking details. According to the page, during the week Brianna was murdered, she was looking forward to that time because she was going to share with her family and friends the gender of her baby. Although Zachary Vozella is accused of murdering a pregnant woman, Roman explained Massachusetts doesn't have the death penalty on a state level, so if he's convicted of first-degree murder, he's facing life without parole. Roman also says it's unlikely prosecutors will strike a deal with him given the severity of the crime.
This is a really horrific and particularly heinous crime. And in Massachusetts, you cannot plead guilty to first-degree murder because it carries a life sentence. And if you plead, you're not entitled to an appeal. So Massachusetts Constitution and the laws give the defendant the benefit to have a trial by a jury of his peers. And then if there are appealable issues, to be able to appeal it because it is a life sentence. It is possible that he could try to plead to a lesser charge than first-degree murder. But I think the prosecution would be hard-pressed to make that kind of deal with him, given the banality and just the absolute, just horrific nature of this crime.
Through his court-appointed lawyer, Zachary denied that he was responsible for the crime. But while there is overwhelming evidence pointing to Zachary allegedly being the killer, Roman explains if the case goes to trial, the defense still has different avenues to explore.
The defense would also have an opportunity, right, to present some mitigating circumstances. Are they going to argue that he was mentally insane and not guilty by reason of insanity? Does he have any sort of history of mental illness that would support that kind of defense? We don't know that yet, but that could be one. The other thing could be that this was sort of a crime of passion. That there's sort of this mitigating circumstance where he sort of temporarily lost his mind when he, is accused and did this crime. So I think, or they could always pull up the third party culprit defense. Well, I was there, but it wasn't me. And I think that's less likely, just from what we've seen so far. We have so much evidence placing him there and his own admission that he was there, but, I didn't see her. I think that we're going to have to see, but I think right now the physical evidence is really strongly pointing towards some involvement, some serious involvement with this crime.
But at this time, no trial date has been set, and Zachary Vozella remains behind bars, while the loved ones of Brianna Welsh continue to remember her as a shining star that went out before her time. Zachary Vozella continues to be held in jail without bail. He's set to appear in court again on September 10th for a probable cause hearing. As for his brother Brandon Vozella, he still faces charges of assault and battery. He appeared in court on August 6th. Reporting for Law and Crime, I'm Elizabeth Millner.